Hello, and welcome to My Week in Baseball. I'm your host, Phil Estruth Harrison. You're listening to Season 2, Episode 9. All episodes are now available in both video and podcast format at myweekinbaseball.com. And thank you to Rose Petal Studios for the artwork and logos created especially for this show and website. You'll find Rose Petal Studios on Instagram at rosepetal_studios. Also, thanks to Brunjo Productions in Nashville for our intro music. Learn more at brunjo.com. Well, today I'll talk about the way earned run average is calculated and one podcaster's idea to change it, Domingo German's perfect game, the Detroit Tigers question marks at third base, how to turn a single into a double, the latest update on Luis Arraez with some did you know facts about his ongoing quest to hit 400, baseball analogies in a book about Machu Picchu, and the unintended consequences of shorter games. Of course, we'll also have a timely blimerick, another baseball trivia teaser for you, and our blast from the past. So let's get right to it. Okay, first, a lead in. I was listening to MLB radio the other night, and I often tune into the Angels. It was the seventh inning or so when I turned it on, and I was only half listening. And at the break, the announcer said, the Angels had a 4-0 lead. Wait, did he say 4-0 or 24-0? I could not possibly have heard that right. But indeed, it was 24-0 in a game that ended with a final score of Angels 25, Rockies 1 in Coors Field, Denver, Colorado. This was on June 24 of this year, 2023, and as you might expect, the Angels set or tied many club records. One of those was having two players go 5 for 5, second-year phenom Mikey Moniak and veteran Hunter Renfroe. Okay, we are getting to the trivia part now. So this was just the fifth time since 1901 that two players on the same team have gone 5 for 5 in the same game. The last time it happened was 2013. Now for 3 points, for 3 trivia points, name the team and the players. You get 1 point for each correct answer. And we'll have the answer for you later in the show, and it will tie in with our blast from the past. Next up, congrats to Domingo German. On June 28, 2023, Yankees right-hander Domingo German tossed 9 perfect innings, 27 batters up, 27 batters down, no hits, no walks, no errors. Now, it was against the lonely A's, who are still in Oakland at this moment, and those A's are on a pace to possibly set the record for the all-time worst team in Major League Baseball. As Bob Uecker used to say about a no-hitter in which he was on the opposing team, quote, I did my part. I went up there, took my 3 pitches, and sat back down again. Well, if you were in the A's lineup that night, you certainly did your part. 99 pitches is all it took to complete this perfect game, and that is sometimes known as a Maddux, in honor of Atlanta Hall of Famer Greg Maddux, who had a propensity of pitching complete games in 99 pitches or less. Now, Domingo German needed this. In his previous 2 starts, he had been absolutely hammered. The 2 starts prior, he pitched a total of 5 1/3 innings. He gave up 15 hits, 5 home runs, and 15 earned runs. Needless to say, he took the loss in both of those games. For his career, though, he has solid, though unspectacular numbers. He has a 31-26 one-loss record in 6 seasons. His career earned run average is 4.40, which is just below the league average during that time. And his WHIP, his walks and hits per innings pitched is 1.18, which is very respectable. He also has a career strikeout rate of 9.2 per 9 innings. So just over one batter per 9 innings. So overall, a solid career. I think of him as like a number 3 starter, probably on a good team, really good team. He's more like a number 4 starter, but he's had a solid career. Next, a quick Luis Arraez update. So after going 2 for 5 opening night in Fenway Park, just earlier this week, at the end of June 2023, Luis Arraez was sitting at a batting average of .399. Now, the major league batting average so far this year is .248, which is about 150 points difference from what Arraez is currently hitting. Or another way to put it is he is hitting 61% better than the average major leaguer as far as batting average goes. Fenway Park, of course, is home to the last 400 hitter, Ted Williams. When Williams hit .406 in 1941, the major league batting average was a little more robust. It was .262, which meant that Williams' average of .406 was just 55% better than the league average hitter. So there's actually a bigger differential this year in what Arraez is doing, even though he's sitting a little below 400 than what Williams did in 1941. But obviously, 2 great seasons, and we hope Arraez keeps doing it. Now, Luis Arraez is a left-handed singles hitter. He hits to all fields. And so one thing I was wondering about, thinking about his great improvement in batting averages this year, did the shift have anything to do with it? But I think that's very unlikely because he really is a singles hitter. He doesn't pull the ball. He sprays it to all fields. So I think it's unlikely that he would have benefited from the shift. He's only hit 3 home runs this year, so people aren't shifting on him for his power. They never would have. Maybe the infielders would play a little deeper. You know, in previous seasons, they sometimes played a bit on the outfield grass, which might help them get to a few balls hit to the right side. But overall, Arraez is not doing this because of rule changes. Luis Arraez's hits are almost equally divided between hitting the left field, center field, and right field. He does lean just a little bit toward hitting it up the middle. And here's a neat piece of trivia. Do you know what his nickname is? La Regadera, which means the sprinkler. He sprinkles his hits all over the field. And this is now the beginning of July, which is almost exactly halfway through the season. And he has dropped off slightly since that opening night in Fenway Park earlier in the week. So in the past 3 games, he's gone just 2 for 12, and his batting average now sits at an even .390 going into today's games. Today, I'm recording this on July 1, 2023. Oh, and I also talked about Arraez in the previous 2 episodes, 7 and 8 of this season, season 2. So if you'd like to learn more about him, please listen to those broadcasts. Next, a baseball reference in a travel adventure book. I happen to be reading a book called Turn Right at Machu Picchu by Mark Adams. From a chapter called Call of the Wild, he's giving some background information about himself leading up to his travels to South America to visit Machu Picchu. And here's the quote, and see if you can pick out the baseball references. There are 2 of them. I think they'll be obvious. Quote, "After rushing through my first couple of years in New York on a frantic sprint from extra innings adolescence to sobering adult responsibility, I spent the next decade on a leisurely slide toward middle age." You probably picked out the references, and I love that phrase, extra innings adolescence. I think that's a good one. The other one to me would be leisurely slide. In case you're interested on that topic, again, the book is Turn Right at Machu Picchu. The author is Mark Adams. Next up, something to honk about. And this time, I'd like us to consider changing the way earned run average is determined when inherited runners are involved. This came to mind the other night while watching the Chicago White Sox play at the Los Angeles Angels. Here's the situation. Shohei Ohtani was pitching, and he leaves with 1 out in the 7th, and there's a runner on first and a runner on second, both runners that he allowed to reach base. The Angels have a 2-0 lead at this point on, guess what, an Ohtani home run. Anyway, he's just past 100 pitches, and apparently he has a slight tear in his fingernail, so they decide to take him out in mid-inning. The reliever comes in and induces a ground ball that gets the runner on second out going to third. And by the way, to do so requires a great play by the LA shortstop, David Fletcher, diving on his stomach to make the stop and tossing a one-hopper to third to record the out. It is a terrific play by David Fletcher. And the runner on first advances to second on the play, and that runner still belongs to Ohtani. So we had 2 runners on. The runner who was on second gets out going to third. The runner who was on first is now at second base. So here is my long-winded point. Ohtani is responsible for the runner being on first, right? But that runner eventually advanced 3 more bases to score off the reliever. Why then should a full earned run be charged to Ohtani? Why not a quarter of a run, with the other 3/4 charged to the reliever? Something to think about. It would more accurately reflect the earned runs given up by starters and relievers. Sometimes relievers' ERAs look too good because they don't take into account the inherited runners that have scored. And I know inherited runners scored is a baseball statistic, but it's not one that pops right out at you. And we have a tendency to focus more on ERA. Oh, and as an aside, later in the inning, Ohtani comes up to bat and hits his second home run of the game to extend the Angels' lead. So let me know what you think of that idea. Should we change the way ERA is calculated? What are your thoughts? Next up, our Blimerick, our baseball limerick that we have every episode, and this time it's a tribute to the inherited runner. Here we go. A pitcher leaves runners on, just barely. The reliever lets them score, not rarely. But why must this play raise the starter's ERA? Let's split it up more fairly. Okay, on to Tigers news. This time we're talking about the recent demotion of Nick Maton and the third base issues the Tigers are having this year. Nick Maton was recently demoted to AAA Toledo. He was one of 2 players the Tigers received in the offseason deal with the Philadelphia Phillies, where the Tigers sent reliever Gregory Soto and utility infielder Cody Clemens, who happens to be the son of Hall of Famer Roger, as in 7-time Cy Young Award winner Roger Clemens. Anyway, Nick Maton, up to this point, had been the primary third baseman for the Tigers, even while batting a ridiculous 163 with an OPS nearly 40% below league average. Ugh. And as a whole, Tigers third baseman entered late June, having combined for an MLB worst 189 batting average and 584 OPS. Okay, now the league average is 728, the league average OPS. So the Tigers third basemen are 150 points below the league average OPS. That means they're absolutely abysmal offensively. Now, there is hope with what is quickly becoming a crowded infield for the Toledo Mud Hens. Colt Keith was just promoted from Double-A, where he was hitting .325 with 14 homers in just 59 games. And Justyn-Henry Malloy was hitting a more modest but very respectable .264 with 11 homers in 72 games and an excellent OPS of .820. Now, the Tigers also have Matt Vierling. Vierling was the other player the Tigers acquire in what we'll call the Gregory Soto trade with Philly. He is hitting .269 with an OPS plus that is a bit above league average, and he's played all three outfield positions, plus a little at second and third. His magician-like slide on June 26 against Texas was beautiful. If you didn't see it, in the top of the ninth inning with Detroit holding a solid lead, Vierling singles to left near the line, and the left fielder Ezekiel Duran picks it up cleanly on one hop. Only Vierling decides from the get-go that he wants this to be a double, so he bends the play to his will. Duran makes a solid throw to second, and it looks like a sure out, but Vierling slides past the bag with his legs too far away to be tagged and reaches back with his hand, popping it above the tag from second baseman Marcus Seaman of the Texas Rangers. And Vierling then quickly drops his hand back down on the bag without sliding past it. It's a bit of now you see it, the hand you're trying to place the tag on, and now you don't. It was one of the coolest and most daring slides I've ever seen. So if you have a chance to look that up, it's Matt Vierling on June 27, turning a single into a double. Now, here's one from the book of unintended consequences. Due to this year's rule changes, the games are shorter. And what is one result that MLB may not have considered? Beer sales drop. I'm not joking. Up to this point, teams typically stop alcohol sales after the seventh inning, presumably to give folks a chance to sober up before they drive home, and perhaps also enough time to finish their cold one. But now, at least 5 teams are extending sales of beer through the 8th inning. Will this result in more DUI citations after the game? Let's hope not, but I doubt MLB is tracking that stat. And now, the answer to today's trivia. So prior to the recent Angels slugfest at Coors Field, the last 2 players on the same team to have gone 5 for 5 in the same game happened in 2013. For 3 points, name the team and the players, 1 point for each correct answer. I'll give you a hint. It's an American League Central team, and I'm wearing their cap. So the answer, part 1, is Detroit Tigers. If you guessed that right, that's 1 point. Who were the 2 players who went 5 for 5 in that game? The answers, Omar Infante and Andy Dirks. And I will be shocked if anyone got any part of that right, especially the 2 players involved. So next episode, I promise an easier trivia question. So that leads us to our blast from the past. And this week, it's the 2013 Detroit Tigers. Infante and Dirks were on that team, and they were the last players to have each gone 5 for 5 in the same game. So the 2013 Tigers, they won the American League Central for the 3rd consecutive time under manager Jim Leyland, and they would go on to win the division 4 straight years. So let's take a look at that team. So the record that year was 93-69, which is not something we see from the current leaders of the American League Central. Right now, it's the Minnesota Twins, and last I checked, they were 2 games below 500. But back in 2013, the Central was a bit more competitive, and the Tigers did win 93 games. That's a very good record. Wish we could go back to those days. They won the American League Division Series 3-2 over the Oakland A's, back when the A's were a good team. They did lose, however, 4-2 in the AL Championship Series to the Boston Red Sox. And that's one we've talked about in previous episodes. There was one particular heartbreaking game, a couple of them. Detroit had a great pitching staff that year, and just the starting staff, but just couldn't do it. And the bullpen kind of let things get out of hand. But let's look a little bit at that team. Omar Infante, who we talked about, he is listed as the starting second baseman on that team. And Andy Dirks, which this surprised me, is listed as the starting left fielder. And I am looking at baseballreference.com for this information. Now, I remember Dirks as being a bit more of a utility player, but as I look down the rest of the roster on that team, we had it was rookie year for Nick Castellanos. And although you think of him now as a designated hitter, and I thought of him as a third baseman for the Tigers, his rookie year, he played left field. And I guess now he is, playing some outfield again. The other position who played some left is a little known Matt, I don't think I can say this last name, Matt Tuiasosopo. Other people on that team, Alex Avila was the starting catcher that year. Prince Fielder played first base for the Tigers. He had a good year, hitting .279 with 25 homers. Johnny Peralta was the shortstop, and believe it or not, Peralta hit 303 with 11 home runs for the Tigers that year. Miguel Cabrera hit 348 with 44 homers, 137 runs batted in, and 103 runs scored. This also includes 90 walks. So Cabrera had a terrific year back then. Center fielder was Austin Jackson. Right fielder was Torrey Hunter, who hit 304 that year for the Tigers. And the designated hitter, Victor Martinez, who hit 301. We'll just mention some of the pitchers on that team. The starting rotation, and this was an awesome rotation: Justin Verlander, Max Scherzer, Doug Fister, Anibal Sanchez, and Rick Porcello. And let's see, Verlander, of course, Cy Young winner. Scherzer ends up being Cy Young winner. Rick Porcello ends up being a Cy Young winner later on. And Anibal Sanchez, one of these seasons, was the American League ERA leader. In this particular year, his ERA was 2.57. So an awesome starting staff. I'll just read off the ERAs. Verlander, 3.46. Scherzer, 2.90. Fister, 3.67. Anibal Sanchez, 2.57. And Rick Porcello as the fifth starter, 4.32. That's really a terrific starting pitching staff. The closer is listed as Joaquin Benoit, who actually had a pretty good record, 4 wins, 1 loss, 2.01 earned run average, and he did save 24 games that year. So that wraps up our blast for the past for today's episode, the 2013 Detroit Tigers. And that's all for today, my friends. So join us next time, because honestly, what can be better than talking baseball? As always, I'm your host, Phil S. Truth Harrison. We'll see you next time on My Week in Baseball.